Casey, Rhonda's there. I'm not sure if you can.
Oh, yep. Perfect. Okay. Hi, Rhonda.
Hey there. Sorry, I was running late, so I tried to get on my phone, which was a no-go.
Oh, no worries. I have the same thing. Sometimes I have to get on my phone and it doesn't want to work.
Yeah, was not being my friend.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order. I'm Dr. Casey Cole. I'm chairperson of AWAC. Rhonda, you can introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Rhonda Stesick. I'm the director at the Animal Welfare Program with GACF.
Dr. Matulis, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Dr. Jessica Matulis. I'm the veterinarian on the council. Katie?
Oh, you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I was having mega speaker issues. Now it's working. I'm Katie Lisnick, director of Greater Androscoggin Humane Society in Lewiston, representing licensed animal shelters. And let's see, Bonnie.
Hello, Bonnie Martinolich. I'm an attorney with Pretty Flaherty, representing an attorney with animal law knowledge on the council. Is that Katie Bernard? KT Bernard?
Yes, hi Bonnie. I'm Katie or Kathleen Bernard, and I am a dog trainer, and I represent the people and pet owners. I see somebody named Terry on there. Let's go with Terry.
I think that's all the members of AWAC that are on, unless I'm wrong. There's one person named meeting guest. I don't know if they're on AWAC or not. I can't tell. Okay. Let's start with animal welfare program updates.
Sure thing. So I am going to share my screen. It says me. Okay, so can you see the document? Yes. Okay, so this is just the monthly report reporting the AWP stats for November. So 12 new complaints in November, and that's the layout of the animals that were affected by those complaints. We had 30 open court cases and an increase of 1 horse in state custody. We're running into a heck of a lot of continuations and delays in the court system, which has been ongoing for quite some time, but really seems to just, maybe because my focus is on the cost of all this stuff, is it just, they tend to continue and continue and continue, which I imagine is happening in lots of kinds of cases, but definitely frustrating when we'd like to get animals into homes instead of sitting in limbo. So that is my update with respect to what's happening at the department. I also want to share the Help Fix Me.
Rhonda, quick question. I was just curious about the other category. Is that wildlife or something like that?
It's not wildlife. It's usually things like guinea pigs, rats, things like that.
Thank you.
We don't typically pull wildlife in without working with
IF&W.
IF&W, correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so next up is the Help Fix Me, the cash report. This is as of 12/9, so last week it was pulled. As you can see, vouchers are continuing to be submitted. We are now in the red as far as cash available and vouchers outstanding. That's what we were concerned about. Again, as I mentioned last time, that we met. The vouchers outstanding number is based on the base surgery cost and does not include the extras that veterinarians have discretion to add on, like pain management, flea and tick medication, vaccines, e-collars, things like that. So that's where the program is at the moment. I have another document to share, but I think it makes more sense to share that when we move into fundraising mode. I know that's on the agenda for today as well, so I'll hold off at this point from sharing.
It's actually the next thing on the agenda.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yep.
So I will kind of, before I share, the caveat is that basically the department is underfunded. We're not able to do at this point the things that we are mandated and asked to do, much less anything else that would be beneficial. Giving you just some examples, and we've talked about this before. I think part of the crush is that we kind of get pummeled with these cases. We have one large case and it overwhelms us for a year. And this is just kind of, I didn't put it together. I asked for it to be put together so that I could share with you all. This is one case which you guys have heard of before, a large case with Wales cats that were seized way back in February, are still in care pending appeal. We're now, already expended $336,000. We expect almost another $100,000, assuming no veterinary care comes up between now and the end of the month. It truly is crushing with respect to doing anything else. We have an open position right now that desperately needs to be filled to keep up with other things but because of our cash situation, we are not at this point moving forward with that hire. We are expected to, by law, be a clearinghouse for thousands and thousands of rabies certificates for dogs every year. And managing those without that extra position, and even with that position filled, was a challenge. It's a 25-hour-a-week job just to intake rabies certificates, sort them, and get them out to municipalities. And we can't do it on our current budget. We've had conversations with the MVMA and with you all about rabies clinics, particularly in northern counties. We would very much love to be able to say, hey, we'll pony up the costs of paperwork and a tech and paying a vet to be there, or, you donate half your time, we'll deal with the rest. We don't have the money to do it. We know that everyone wants the phase 2 training to take place in 2023. We have great ideas on what to do with that. We've spoken to providers. We would like to move forward. We are not in the financial position to enter into a contract to do that at this point, largely because of the cost of these seizures. So it's a big deal. And I recognize there are lots of things we'd like to raise money and spend money on. There are also requirements that we have that we're having trouble meeting. And it is not an issue with staff not doubling down and doing their jobs. Most staff right now are doubling down and doing their jobs plus more, and it's unsustainable. So, that can be approached a number of ways. Some of it might require legislation, which is a process. Some of it requires independent fundraising. I'm not sure what that looks like with respect to AWAC, but it's certainly the case. So that's what I've got for you on that. We need some help.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Yep.
Let me just a quick idea, and I don't know if it works. Is the state able to use volunteers, people who would come in and be able to help with some of this paperwork, moving the paperwork around?
I believe in some cases, yes, in many cases, no. Because of confidentiality issues.
Right.
But I
so
think
that
in
makes
some
sense.
cases they could. Yeah,
Like rabies
we'd have
certificates
to
are
really
public.
carve out what that would be, what we'd be able to utilize that for.
Just a thought, maybe to put in the mix.
Yep. Sure.
So I know one of the things being discussed in the dog licensing subcommittee might help a little bit with some of that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to go into that, Jess. You want me to go into it?
Sure. So Rhonda, unfortunately, we talked about it after you left in the meeting the other day, but I did bring it up at the MVMA board meeting the other day, that whole, what we were talking about. So Rhonda met with me probably about a month ago now, maybe. And we were talking about, she had found this little, basically this little excerpt in one of the meeting minutes a while ago, years ago, I guess, mentioning
20 years ago. It was a report from 20 years ago. Yeah.
Surprisingly that hasn't come up before then. But so the idea was to increase, essentially make dog licensing null and void. So getting rid of dog licensing, period. And our thought was to increase the cost of the rabies vaccine statewide, so for dogs and cats. And then the veterinarians would be the ones that would be basically registering the dogs and to the computerized system that we've been talking about setting up. So I did bring it up at the MVMA board meeting. It seemed like most of the people were pretty on board with it. There was one person who was definitely more I don't want to say combative, but argumentative, or trying to be the devil's advocate, in the sense that, you know, that she's like, well, you're going to get some pushback from people about increasing the cost of the rabies, and, you know, how would you mandate that these veterinarians actually give the money to the state once they receive it? So, you know, they'd have to either keep like a separate account for just that and be able to directly send that to the state, or not. Like, how would there be tracking there? Just like an honor system, or what's going on there? And then, you know, of course, they were concerned about, like, how much extra work is this going to be from the veterinarians, quote unquote, not being compensated. So there was that. I still agree with you. I think that it's something that would be easy. It would eliminate the town clerk's, you know, stress of dealing with those the rabies. It would eliminate a lot of stress from a lot of different people. It might add a little bit extra work for the veterinarians, but I don't really see how much more work it would be, honestly. But
You already have to send the paperwork in anyways.
right.
Right.
I mean, so I guess I just didn't really understand that point she was talking about, but I think it's something that needs to happen. I mean, like you said, that the cost of even licensing in general hasn't increased in a long, long time. So I think if it's mandated through rabies, like most of the clients I see that are rabies only, which unfortunately there's a lot of them. I mean, they don't need an exam to get a rabies vaccine, unfortunately, but it's kind of one of those, like, it's a forced mandate. Like, they have to pay that if they want to get a rabies. So I feel like the client pushback might be a little bit, but not, I mean, they know at the end of the day they need the rabies, and that's the only way they're going to get it. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of pushback from the clients. I really don't think many veterinarians, especially if they understand why we're doing this, you know, I definitely think they would understand and be fine with increasing the cost of that rabies. I think, especially if it's something like $5, I don't think it should go up like $15 or anything, especially if we're increasing costs for cats. Like, if we're doing it for the cats as well, I mean, that's an untapped resource we're not using right now anyway with the dog licensing. So I think that would be a significant extra income for the state through the cat vaccinations. So, but what are your thoughts, Casey and Rhonda? I don't know. I think it's a great idea, and I'd like to get the ball rolling on that, but I don't know what we have to do for that. So
The another thing that came up in the meeting is there's precedent for something like that already with the Coggins test. The
Right.
state charges a fee with each Coggins test on top of
Yep.
the lab
Mhm.
that the vets collect and pay out. So it's not something that hasn't been done.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have that's a great example, Casey. So there's already a somewhat of a process in place and an example that we can use. And I think there are several other reasons to look at moving in that direction. One being, as Dr. Matulis will tell you, is that, significant pushback in the subcommittee on dog licensing is from the town clerks. They don't want to do it. They think it's a money loser for them. Some are very active. If Garth is on, that's one community you can look to that really has kind of worked the licensing to their benefit, but they're also pretty well resourced in the grand scheme of what we're looking at in the state. I think that it's long been known that, and always been a question for at least 20 years, we know, and before that, obviously, to have been in that report that I located, that why are dog owners only bearing the cost of animal welfare program, as opposed to all pet owners? Dogs are far lesser of our concern with respect to daily interactions, complaints, seizures, then if you put everybody else together, dogs are on the lower end. I mean, it evens out. We're dealing with livestock, we're dealing with poultry, we're dealing with reptiles, we're dealing with cats, we're dealing with dogs. And dog licensing, dog owners are the only ones that directly contribute to that programming. I think with respect to veterinarians, they're already sending the certificates to us. It would require something like, I know on my vet bills that I get from a variety of vets over the years, is there's a line item for things like disposal. I'm sure all of that software is capable of producing a state fee on top of that. And again, anyone who's adding the Coggins fees understands that that's just how it's done. I think the extra burden for veterinarians is likely minimal with respect to making sure payments go in. I think that could be done a couple of ways. It could either come with the certificates, or it could come quarterly or annually. I think annually is hard on people, but I think regularly timed makes sense to do that. And I believe it should be any rabies vaccine that's given, which is not just dogs and cats. We give them to ferrets and swine and who else? Cows sometimes? I don't know.
Cows, sheep, and goats. I vaccinated all. So, I mean, technically, yeah.
Yeah. So
any mammal.
Right. Yeah. So I definitely think that's an option. I don't know. I think we could figure out who really gets burdened with the data entry, because everybody's on different software. It would be so much easier if we could say there was just something they could check in their software and it would upload the information for registration or something like that. Unfortunately, it probably will take data entry on someone's behalf. I don't see that as taking significantly longer than it's taking us to deal with all the rabies certificates we're dealing with. So it perhaps means at least half FTE position at AWP. I suspect that adding all of the other animals at a $6 or $5 charge probably allows us to do that.
So one of the veterinarians that I work with, a good point. So if the rabies, so like for dogs, it can be every 3 year. So we may have to figure out that remedy, like how would we do that annually versus every 3 year,
Sure.
So that's the one glitch there as far as registration goes, but
so dogs and cats can be every 3, and maybe you probably attach it not to the species, but to whether it's a 1 year or a 3 year.
Yeah.
There are different rates. Yeah. But that's kind of the one, and I wish I could say I was the genius who thought of it, but I absolutely am not. I pulled it out of a report from 20 years ago. And to be fair, town clerks apparently have been discussing pushing back to dog licensing, going back to vets when you get a rabies vaccine. So putting those things together kind of brings us to here. And I suspect there simply wasn't an appetite for it 20 years ago. I don't know what the specific pushback is, or if it was such a small piece that maybe it just never got picked up on. But I think this may be the time. It is a legislative change, so obviously would require that whole process. So not a short-term fix, but a long-term.
Yeah, and we'd probably have to plan it for next year because closure is at December 30th.
Yeah.
Yeah. Katie?
Yeah, well, yeah, if we have a year to talk about it and troubleshoot, then I think that's good. I was a little concerned about it getting put in as a bill right, immediately. Because obviously the shelters do a large number of rabies vaccines as well as other vaccines at our clinics, many in-shelter clinics and out in the community. There's also a growing number, Tractor Supply, Petco's doing them, places that are doing these sort of low cost vaccine packages. So, the compliance and the data entry that they would need to be doing, we just would need to talk with them and make sure that they can do that. I know it would add a burden to shelters. I can tell you that just with, right now we're all doing it a little differently and we all have different software. We all track things very differently. And none of our software systems are really built to do that sort of data management. And then having to save money, send it on to the state. So, it might be asking a little more of some of the shelters than some of the veterinarians, and I'd want to get their feedback. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's just being able to actually think logistically of how this could be achieved.
The shelters are sending in the rabies certificates to the state though already, right?
I don't think they are.
If they're veterinarians are giving rabies vaccines, they're mandated to do it.
Yeah, they have to.
There may be some that you're not getting then.
Okay. And it's something that certainly may be put on the next main Fed call because it absolutely is required. Veterinarians required to give it, veterinarians required to submit it.
Okay. Yeah, I bet we're there may be some that aren't getting sent to the state through that.
Right. The other piece of that, Katie, is I know that at least with PetPoint and some of the other bigger softwares is you can add a fee piecemeal to everything as a line item if you're using yeah. So, and I guess I'm questioning what you're saying about how data management would be difficult.
Well, so not every shelter uses PetPoint. Some of the shelters don't have any software. So I don't really understand what exactly, if we're doing a vaccine clinic and we give out, 80 rabies vaccines to dogs and cats and ferrets, what data do we actually need to be tracking to then pass on to the state?
It would be exactly what's on the rabies certificate, and there would be a fee, whatever is decided, that gets tacked on to every rabies certificate, every rabies cost. So you would be collecting all of that information. You're required to put it on the certificates anyway. And you're supposed to be keeping a copy and sending a copy. So I guess I'm not seeing what the extra is, the money collection and remittal. And then if there is some kind of decision on who does the data entry on that. I guess in my head, I kind of saw that as, I shouldn't say it, is Ann on the call? I kind of saw it as our issue with respect to data, but
Yeah. No,
Okay.
you're not,
Based on
you're not
the
talking about
submission.
that.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh, good. I'm not in trouble. I kind of saw that as our end. That was kind of a trade-off with respect to, sorting and sending out all of these rabies certificate is a monumental task anyway, versus putting the data in and keeping them, right? So I don't, it's a trade-off. It might be a little more. It's probably not a super amount more.
Okay.
And shouldn't be a super amount more the second time an animal or an owner has a rabies vaccine, right? Because it's the initial data entry that's the big deal. And after that, you've got people's info already.
And,
But-
and if you're not using software, there are these rabies certificate booklets you can get that are
Yep.
carbon paper. And you can just handwrite everything in, and you'll get 3 or 4 copies off that one writing, and then you can just send everything out. So it really doesn't add that much to do.
Rhonda, aren't you talking about, maybe I missed this part, but aren't you talking about like a universal like registry, like online? We would be talking about like everyone would be using, so it wouldn't matter.
Well, I think we have some options, right? If you're so the dog licensing database mandate that was put in place, that is something that's been being worked on for quite some time, was so that all town clerks and all animal control officers could access and put in their own information, their own data, and then they'd be able to access any of the information from their town or from their county or however that went. I think that if you went and moved away from that direction where town clerks don't need all of that access, I guess in my head, I didn't think about tasking veterinarians with doing data entry in a universal database. That,
Okay.
I mean, that,
Yeah, no,
that
that's
I
fine.
suppose that could happen. That would make my life easier, but it isn't something I was truly thinking about.
So you're thinking basically we just send the rabies certificates, regardless of how we do it, online, paper, whatever, to you guys with the money that we would have accrued from the fee, right?
That's correct. And the additional kind of ask on the veterinarian's part is they would have to receive and issue rabies tags. And
Yeah,
they're doing that anyway. We would just have to coordinate. Maybe coordinate. I haven't even worked that through. Does it have to be like the dog licenses and everybody gets the sequential numbers throughout the state? Or is there just, we ask everybody to use a code for their clinic or certain, I don't know. There's a way to do all of that. But no,
So
I didn't see an extra ask of data entry.
yeah, livestock and cats don't get tags, so that would be
Right.
the only. I don't know if that even matters. I mean, if you're doing, like you said, the sequential number thing or whatever, that.
Right.
I think, Rhonda, too, one thing that we wanted to look at was maybe trying to have a system where we weren't actually doing, if possible, hard copies of certificates. That's actually the
Electronic
penultimate. Yeah.
submission.
Yeah, because
Yep.
that's, just getting moving in that
We
direction.
would like to have some kind of electronic submission of certificates instead of stacks and stacks and boxes of certificates that come in. Right now, the statute actually says fax, email, or USPS. It doesn't give us an electronic transfer option other than email. But obviously that's because it's outdated. There may be another way to do that, whether that is, versus actual certificates being sent. Maybe it's an Excel sheet from every vet that has the information we need and we get it converted into whatever database it is. Again, those are kind of smaller challenges to tackle with respect to process. I think that the bigger hurdle is getting folks on board and dealing with the legislative process. And Katie, I absolutely agree. This is not something you can push through quickly at the end of a year. This is we do not want to go back 2 years from now and say, why'd we do it that way? It needs to be thought through and worked through, and, you know, having details figured out with stakeholder concerns.
And that's what I told the MVMA the other night. I said, this is just a thought. Like, we just wanted to get some feelers out there and see where people even stood on this, because it was literally just a online thing. It was just a thing we were thinking about that would fix a huge problem in our state, hopefully, but may not require that much more effort and would relieve some other people's effort, like the town clerks and stuff. So.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see much pushback. There was one person on the MVMA board pushing back a little bit, but I don't see much pushback happening. You might see a little more with the large animal vets, the livestock vets, because they don't have to do the reporting right now.
Yeah, right.
I don't think it would be huge either. A lot of them have to send enough paperwork into state and state lab stuff that they're already doing it for other things, so.
But that'll be the process of just, investigating, checking with stakeholders and seeing what works, what doesn't work. I mean, there's all kinds of opportunity to hone this in to make it work and, get support with what everybody can live with, essentially.
And as much work as it feels like at this moment, I think it is probably the biggest bang for our buck or the biggest buck for our bang, however you want to look at that, with respect to how can we raise revenue for the department to continue managing what we're asked to do, and spreading that cost to all animal owners who we serve. So it's kind of a no-brainer to me, but, I have a pretty biased opinion probably.
Oh, I agree with you. I think it's the best plan. Sorry.
Casey, Rhonda, is there any way for us, I don't know how we would do this, but to increase awareness in our state about the need for some change here, like financial, I don't know. I just feel like a lot of people don't understand where these funds go for the license plates and the rabies and all of these. I don't think they really have any concept of what this money is used for and why. I think if people did know more about it, I think they'd be way more willing to help out, I think. But maybe I'm just trying to see the good in most people. But I think that, if they kind of understood what you deal with, Rhonda, with, all these seizures and stuff and how much money they cost and how the state just doesn't have that kind of money and we need to find a bigger plan. I think as a human, a race, I feel like most people be more inclined to try to help out in some way that they can. I mean, I feel like I see it all the time. People can't afford, foreign body surgery on their dog. So they'll go online and they'll get, thousands of dollars raised for one dog for one procedure, and I feel like maybe if they understand how dire our welfare department is in this state, maybe people would be more willing to help out in ways they can. So I don't know. I don't know how we would do that, but I feel like that's to happen, so.
Right. And I don't know how, I don't know what the approach to that is. I do think there is a significant misunderstanding about how the department is funded, how the program is funded, because we don't get general funds. Everything is targeted from a specific place and all animal oriented. So, I mean, Anne can describe a little bit more of that, but I don't think people understand that. I think a lot of people that we come in contact with assume that because we're a state enforcement agency, the money will just show up. You can have hiring bans and you can have, hiring freezes and you can have all kinds of of kind of freezes on spending and things like that. And yet law enforcement seems to often be able to still continue their work despite that and still continue to move forward with their needs. And I think people lump us into that in many ways and assume we will just be able to continue. And we're mandated to do that. We're just not funded to do that. So there's definitely a disparity between what we're being told and asked to do and what we have the funds to do.
I think to Jessica's, this is Bonnie. I think to Jessica's point, it's very well. I hear you, Jessica. I think some of it is transparency. I think it's a more communication from the department about what's going on, what you showed us with that one case and how much it cost the state in that one case. And if there was just more communication directed, I know the Department of Agriculture, I get their emails regularly for a host of different issues. I don't know if that's one means. We talked about fundraising. I know when the AWP license came out, I saw little flyers everywhere about getting your license. When I first moved to Maine over 20 years ago, they had Help Fix Me little pamphlets at every single vet's office that you would go to. There's no outreach anymore. I don't know how much it costs. I don't know how they do it, but I think getting the word out is really, and being transparent, I think is really important.
So, and I believe most of that was spearheaded by Spay Maine. Anne, is that correct?
That's just the Help Fix Me.
Yes,
just
correct.
Yeah, just the Help.
Which is what most people are familiar with. Yeah.
There was a whole coalition back when the license plate was created. It was Maine Adoption Leaders Team, the MALT group. So there were a lot of shelters involved. I was part of it when I was working for HSUS. Spay Maine was a driving force behind it. And we spent a lot of money on marketing materials and getting it out into the community. And I certainly think that that's something that should be looked into. Again, there's so much more electronic means nowadays that we could be tapping into that, putting things on websites, putting things in people's e-newsletters, I think it's very doable. And I think a lot of the animal facing entities in the state would do that to help communicate. I know there has been frustration with the Department of Ag, Conservation and Forestry of not talking about animal welfare messages as much as they talk about other things. So talking about the license plate, the animal welfare license plate, I think it may have gotten minimal mention when it first came out, but yet the farm ag plate gets talked about a lot. Or same with IF&W, they're always talking about the sportsman's plate or the chickadee plate, but they're not talking about the animal welfare plate. So I think, that frustration, if we can get more communications about animal welfare out through the state departments where it's applicable, would be really nice, and show the nonprofits and the vet offices that, hey, you're part of a larger effort here, and it's not just falling on your backs to help spread the word.
Yeah, I think I've often advocated that we should also talk about some of the positive things that our staff do. I've always wanted to do that, and I've tried to get some of that with our PR folks, and I think we can still continue, to try to do that, because to your points, I don't think people understand what folks are doing. And then Rhonda's piece on the costs. Yeah, we have to be a little careful, but how do you sort of let people get a sense of what's all involved and the type of work that we do. But yeah, no, I think there's opportunity. It just takes time to get, organized to do it. But I think we can certainly work with our communications person, and if we sort of have a goal or a direction that we're trying to, a message to get out and things like that, I think. Yeah.
And I think you'll find help in the animal. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jessica.
No, go ahead.
Katie, I'm sorry.
You're going to say the same thing I think I am. Go ahead.
Maybe, I don't know, but in the animal welfare community, you've got a lot of different constituencies that provide support, but also in the talking to legislators. And I think part of what needs to happen is more information to the legislators about what's happening financially, what's being requested, what can be done with the funds. I think the legislators need to be informed on a regular basis and not just once a year or once every 2 years when you go out and try to do some legislation. And I don't know how we facilitate that type of relationship. And I don't know how internally, if there's probably a lobbying and anti-lobbying, but you've got so many constituencies that if we had the information, we could help in that regard.
No, I think that's excellent. And that's how it would work, right? We could provide you with information, and then, you certainly are the body, and you're all, able to, spread the message. So that would be very helpful. It's a great suggestion.
Katie, was that where you were going? I don't know.
That was similar. Yeah, I think, there are a lot of folks who feel passionately about this. Obviously, we've got a huge network of animal welfare folks all across the state that can be tapped into. If there's momentum amongst AWAC members to, have a subcommittee, because I think a couple of the other subcommittees aren't long-term, they're going to hopefully phase out once the job is done. But another one to consider fundraising, maybe just to focus on marketing, whatever, because it takes time and effort to put together marketing materials that are catchy and cute and clever enough that will capture people's eye and informative. So if there's interest in that, I think it might be helpful if we, as a committee, could have people who weren't on AWAC involved, and maybe there's some sort of process of determining who gets on the committee, but being able to tap into people who have marketing expertise or fundraising expertise and want to lend their thoughts and efforts to this, we could tap into some really amazing folks.
I think all that's good stuff for sure.
I agree. I think the big thing too is, yes, the Help Fix Me program is important, but I feel like a lot of people just focus on, oh, this money's going to help fix me. And unfortunately for some people, and Katie, I'm sure you're shaking your head, but it has a negative connotation to it, which is why, like that survey that went out to the veterinarians, Casey, the one I know you read it, but about the Help Fix Me program and why a lot of veterinarians don't do it and stuff. So I think focusing on what other aspects of animal welfare this would be contributing to is really important to note, because I think that those are significantly positive things. Even so is Help Fix Me, but again, I think talking about these cases and how ultimately we need care for these animals is a big thing, that we need to get people to understand, that that's where the funds are going to, not just just spay and neuter. It's other things as well that are significantly more important than just spay and neuter. It's an animal's life that you're talking about, and thousands of animals' lives, so that's important too, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of really good points. That if we can get people to understand more, it'd be great. Any more thoughts on fundraising right now? Does anyone else have any ideas?
Can we put on potentially for the next meeting on the agenda that maybe we're ready for a subcommittee to be discussed and we talk about what that might look like? I don't know that we're ready today, but
Yep.
Maybe for the next meeting.
Sounds like a good plan. Okay. Moving on. The next agenda items, the committees. We've already kind of talked about the dog licensing stuff. Do we have any updates from the ACO subcommittee?
We have not had a meeting since the last AWAC meeting. I did just communicate a little bit with Rhonda, trying to get a little more clarity around what that committee could produce that would be helpful, as opposed to just kind of talking about stuff. And yeah, Rhonda, to your question, there really wasn't a specific charter that was created of, this is what the end product will look like. So we just were sort of gathering info. So I have a feeler out to the people who have attended that committee in the past to try to set a meeting in January. And hopefully we can do that prior to the AWAC meeting in January, and we'll have more to report for that.
Yeah, and the thing that I kind of responded to Katie saying, I'm unclear, and I went back and listened to some of the previous meetings on YouTube. I'm a little unclear on kind of what the subcommittee was tasked with, whether it was just exploration, whether it was coming up with the recommendation, whether it was a legislative focus. So that lack of clarity makes it kind of hard for me to think about an end product. Other than, I think the other thing I said is, perhaps what the role is, given that you can't really force any town or county or group to coalesce and do that together, is to simply provide the resources to make it easier and have them understand the benefit of doing so. And making sure that they have the information that they need that can improve particularly the situations with the smaller locales that really struggle, and really they may have an animal control officer in name, but not particularly in function. And that's really the challenge, is that balance between the big cities, big areas that are well funded and doing great on their own. They may have surrounding areas that could really use help, but it may not make sense for the bigger entity to participate in that kind of a coalition. You've got to figure out what the benefits to all are. And I think from AWP's perspective, we like this model, and we like it because typically when there is an issue in the smaller municipalities where they have a very part-time or an on-call ACO, it very often then falls to the humane agent to deal with local issues. That just adds to the already very full load that all of our staff members have. And yet at the same time, the blowback of not helping is significant from the state agency. So,
and I think the goal of the subcommittee was to look at that and see if we wanted to try to push for more of that model throughout the state. I think that was the general goal.
Yeah, I like the idea of coming up, like you said, we can't force any municipality to do it anyway, but we can offer some guidance, and this committee could put together, hey, here's a couple of options that are working really well. Here's how you do it. Here's the benefits to it. And, at least it's a resource for the community, for the towns to look at. And yeah, I think we originally started out with Garth heading up the charge and being so knowledgeable on it. And then I'm a very poor substitute leading this charge. So I think we kind of hit a little bit of a rough patch, but we'll pull back together and get you something that's helpful.
Okay. Next on the agenda, any new business from members of the committee that we want to discuss? Okay. Opening up to public comment.
So can I add one more thing that I should have done before and did not, but as I look through my notes, I want to just make sure, come back to our discussion from the last meeting, and just kind of concisely put where we're at with Help Fix Me and make sure we're all on the same page and that we fully understand where we're going. That starting in January, we will look at the funds received, issue up to 50% of those amounts on a monthly basis in vouchers based on the base amount of the voucher. that we will not have a geographical focus, but that we will focus on veterinary providers that have clinics and can readily do surgeries in the forthcoming couple of weeks to the forthcoming month, we'll say, and that we will reassess that monthly, that we will not be issuing individual vouchers. And one of the things that Anne and I talked about today that I wanted to bring to you is, instead of issuing individual vouchers, that our suggestion, if you all agree, is to go ahead and publish where the vouchers are going to those providers and listing their clinics publicly, and then having our staff have those resources readily available of, here are the clinics upcoming for the next month or 6 weeks in the upcoming time in each county, perhaps. And being able to direct them to those providers directly who we know we have provided vouchers to, instead of having individual vouchers issued who then can't find surgery.
Yeah, because to Rhonda's point, I just wanted to share that we will have a limited date used by on these vouchers. We're not going to do, the whole year, so that we'll be able to account for the funds a little bit more readily. Yeah.
So I'm thinking of a communication issue. Are we still do we have outstanding applications that have not been responded to for Help Fix Me vouchers?
Always. There are inquiries always. There's no way to.
No, I don't think you can stop it, but I think that if we're going to make the change, people need to be put on notice ahead of time. And if people are inquiring, we need to tell them, here's how it's going to start functioning as of whatever future date that is.
Yep.
And we urge you to look here, so that they know where to go and how to find this, rather than just say, today is the day and we changed everything. And people are like, wait, I sent you an email 2 months ago and I still don't have a response. I mean, I think this is part of the communication and the outreach and the transparency that the community needs to hear from AWP. Right.
Yeah, understood. And that's why, again, I wanted to clarify today so that we can document it, get it on our website. Everybody's giving the same information. And so that we can make sure that those veterinary providers who do request vouchers know that we will be providing their information as holders of vouchers.
Well,
so, and just something I kind of want to throw on the table here. We talked a little bit last time about how we had all these outstanding vouchers and what would get used and what wouldn't. And we made a pretty hefty lift we provided over the last 2 weeks of figuring out where vouchers were. And we reached out to every organization that we showed that had outstanding vouchers, to find, not to individuals, to organizations that had vouchers, to find out what the status was. Were they used and not invoiced yet? Were they lost? Were they put in a drawer? What happened to the vouchers? Were they going to use them before they expired at the end of the year? And we were able to reissue to some folks who had literally, I think in one case, shredded. Am I right, Katie?
Yes, we thought they were
because
expired.
they thought they were technically expired. So being responsible, they shredded them when they expired so they wouldn't get used when they didn't think there was money attached to them. So we were able to reissue those and get those back out so they can be used by the end of the year. We also were able to, we very quickly had a response from Animal Refuge League, and we were able to take vouchers that they did not believe they were going to be able to use by the end of the year and reissue them for a clinic that's being held in, don't ask me what county, that felt they needed more vouchers and had been requesting them and was up there on the list next in line. So we were able to redo some of that stuff. That being said, we did have a number of organizations that simply have not responded to our inquiries about, are you using them? Are they out there? et cetera. And that's perhaps a main Fed discussion.
Yeah, if
'Cause
you can
we-
give me further, we can
Yeah.
certainly be talking with our constituency about that. We can, have a meeting and have you come on. We can send out a communication, whatever would
I
be
mean, I
helpful.
think it's just a matter of what, we could have, I mean, it's too late now. It's the 14th, but
Yeah,
a week and a half ago, we were scrambling to be able to get these last kind of mobile clinics covered that we knew were happening and didn't have vouchers. And we knew there were vouchers out there just sitting. But we had to hear from people. In one case, there were 30 vouchers that looked unaccounted for. They, in fact, had been used, just hadn't been submitted in a timely fashion. And they were working on getting those in. So you can't just assume and then reissue. So I think we also need to look at smaller distributions and shorter expiration dates and all of those things to functionally use them in a responsible way. And that's all I've got. I just wanted to make sure you guys knew what was happening so that when we post it, when we give that information, and that organizations will be getting phone calls from individuals, because we will let people know where those are in, an effort to get them used.
Awesome. Thank you. Any comments on that? Okay. Opening up to public comment. Beth Galley.
I think she's muted.
Beth, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
And she put her hand back down. Okay, any more public comment? Doesn't look like it. Okay, let's set the next meeting date. Looking at January. Does only Wednesdays work for everybody, or would a Thursday work?
Depends on the Thursday, but it's not the day of the week that matters. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
what's going on that, whatever day it is.
Mhm.
What are you thinking, Casey?
Can we do Thursday the 19th?
Fine by me.
Yep.
I probably can. I just have to move some appointments around, but
Ouch.
Would a different Thursday work better for you?
well, no, I mean, Wednesdays just work because that's kind of my quote unquote large animal day. So I kind of just like work it in between my work day, but I can make it work. I'll just have them, I think another vet's working with me that day. Yeah. So I'll just have them move a couple appointments and it'll be fine.
Okay. Okay, let's say January 19th at 1. Okay. Do I have
So
a motion?
Beth added a question in the chat about what about putting the contract out to bid as the law may have required. And Beth, that is, rulemaking is underway. We have pushed those up and they are in the commissioner's office. So we're waiting for a hearing to be set on those. And after rulemaking takes place, the RFP process takes place. Unfortunately, it's a long process. If you want more info on that, I would suggest you go to the AWP website, look for the Animal Welfare Advisory Committee. The meeting from the last two meetings, those were discussed kind of in depth if you want to review them. But yes, that is all under process. All set.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Matt, where you at?
Katie, you were muted, but
I'll
I think you
second.
said. Okay.
Sorry, I was apologizing for my intercom go. But yes, I second.
Oh, okay. All in favor? Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
See
Thanks,
ya.
everybody.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, happy
Bye-bye.
holidays.
Happy holidays.
Bye.